Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Riverdale season finale. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, it is the impending doom. Like, there is no escape from Riverdale. Percival gave all the middle fingers. Not only is the comet coming down, because they're like, really, could he be powerful enough to make a comet come down? It's like, yeah, with everything going on, the fact is he's been practicing magic for hundreds of years. The fact of the matter is, yeah, he had the juice necessarily to do this. Plus, another middle finger is, hey, he created a magical barrier around. Probably if he could have died, because yeah, the devil, Mr. Scratch has his, no, it's not Mr. Scratch, it's Mr. Cypher, sorry. Mr. Cypher has his soul, but that doesn't mean anything because he's not dead. He's just internally, like, forever in Mr. Cypher's to do whatever with. So it's like, if he probably was dead, but to be fair, he's immortal too. Well, to be fair, they time traveled back to before he made his deal, so he is no longer immortal. So, but, like, your soul belonging to the devil isn't the same thing as you straight up being dead. So if they had probably straight up killed him, maybe, I don't know. Well, didn't he technically die when they, like, stabbed him a whole bunch of times and then ended up teleporting him back? Whatever the case may be. Because I was about to say, like, usually a spell enacted will die when it will disappear when a person dies. But it's like, I guess, once again, I guess the technicality of it all. But also, sometimes it is a thing of like, oh yeah, with my final breath, I'm releasing a curse that's going to doom you. Like, I mean, look at Cheryl's, like, Abigail's curse that ended up kind of coming back full force, even though she died and burned at the stake. So, it's that type of situation too. So, literally no one can leave Riverdale. You can enter Riverdale, which obviously makes me immediately think of like, Once Upon a Time. It's like, cool, you can go in, but you can come in, but you can't go out. So they're all screwed. It's like, and I figured Anthony would be the one that survived. It didn't even cross my mind. I was like, right, Archie is invulnerable, so he is the one who could also survive the comet as well. So it's like, right, they'd be the only people in Riverdale who potentially could survive all of this. And now it's like, right, time is clicking down, and it's like, there's no other options, because this magic goes beyond even what Heather and Cheryl are, aware of and can do anything about. Because this was dark magic that was cultivated over like hundreds of years to kind of make all for this like one moment. This one, I mean, it's almost like gathering energy for a spirit bomb. Took a very 100-year-long spirit bomb in the form of a comet. So, interesting enough, Cheryl went to Abigail for help, which I thought was like, oh, I think that's going to be making a deal with the devil. But Abigail's like, cool, I'll help you out. In exchange, I need to take over your body, and my love, Thomasina, needs to take over Tony's body, and we gotta, like, make love one last time, which I'm like, oh, that's weird, because even Tony and Cheryl wake up like, oh, do you remember anything? He's like, no, I don't remember anything. It's like, pardon me. Like, with some of that, I'm almost like, did you not actually remember anything, or do you remember anything and you're just not saying anything, or is it just like, right, it's, you just kind of be like, yeah, are you kind of upset that you don't remember anything? Because it's like, I don't know. Because there's this moment where, like, Cheryl's thanking her. She's like, yeah, I'd do anything to save the town. But I think there's a part of Cheryl that's like, yeah, thanks, for saving the town. But it's also like, I like that. Us, like, being able to wake up with you next to me. Like, she hasn't had that in over 7 years. So, I mean, this was the episode of relationships. It's like, everyone's doubling down in their circumstances. Everyone's trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Veronica, her, and Reggie kind of made up. And Reggie even brought her father's painting. And it's like, right, despite everything, it's like her and her dad at the very end together. But she also told Reggie, because Reggie's like, hey, is there a chance of us getting back together? Because he's like, hey, you can have the casino all to yourself. This was always your baby, so yeah, you can have it again. Whichever way this all plays out. And he's like, oh, good chance of us getting together. And she's like, I don't think that's a good idea. She's like, I want to focus more on me than being in relationships right now. Because she also had to put a pin in the whole her and Archie thing, because Archie came to her for a ring, which she was like, oh, is this weird? She's like, no. Because Archie doesn't know that Veronica still has feelings for him. It's like, right, I know we're it's been a while, but we broke up and now I'm with Betty, but you seem copacetic and cool with that, because obviously it's like, right, her ex and her best friend. So there's that whole situation, but it's still the thing of like, right, helping him get the wedding ring. So it's like, right, solidifying, because Tabitha did say there are just as many reality or timelines or opportunities for Veronica to be with Archie, just like there are for him to be with Betty. It's very even split. Maybe not even, but she did say there were just a lot of them. So, but that's complicated, and I think for her, it's like, right, I'm gonna not focus on a relationship. I'm gonna be single for a while. I'm gonna date around. Like, I'm not gonna get so caught up in like love, and I'm just gonna live my life the way I want to. And it's like, I want us to be friends. And it's like, yeah, I don't think us being together is kind of a good thing. And Reggie's like, yeah, sure. It's like, he kind of didn't mean that. Like, he was, saying that while he was sipping the tea or whatever. And she's like, right, let's spend that night together. He's like, as friends? She's like, yes, as friend. He's like, but and she's like, as friends, Reggie. He's like, no, I'm making sure, like, there ain't no, like, benefits, like, well, come on, one last hurrah. It's like, no. Even at the end, we gotta set that in stone just in case we do survive this. So, there's that. Archie is doing everything he can, and I love that it comes full circle with Archie in so many regards. The fact is that he's trying to do everything he can to find a way out. They were trying to dig underneath the barrier, but the barrier goes underneath ground. No matter how far they go and how far they dig, what should be underneath should be the edge of town. The barrier extends down below the ground as well. Like, they probably could never dig deep enough to escape it. It's probably like all the way, like probably humanly impossible for them to dig all the way down. Well, maybe Archie, considering like he's invulnerable. I mean, timing also sucks because his mom's in town too, because she just got divorced. And it's just like, they didn't really go into it, but it's just like, right, we just figured it was kind of our perfect, like, we should go our separate ways and kind of be with the people we loved. And I think that trickled down to Archie, like, man, like, we don't have that much time. So he wants to propose to Betty, but Betty's like, no, like, I like us being where we are, but I think for her, it's like, it shouldn't be like it's okay to be scared, but you shouldn't make a choice like this just because you're scared. And because Archie feels like he failed everyone, because he had this beautiful moment when he's talking to his mom, and he shared this moment with also Betty too, of feeling like, because she's like, you're the hero of this town, like you hold so much weight, like he's always been the hero of this town, but even more so, like he took that responsibility on after his dad died, and season 4, that he has to be the one. Like, my dad was the pillar of this community. He built so many of Riverdale by hand, and it's like, I feel like if I can't save this town that he built, then I failed him. But his mom had to be like, no, your father would be so proud of the man that you've become. And yeah, Archie's made mistakes here and there, but he's always tried to do the right thing. He's become like probably the best version of himself. Everything that you've done has gotten this far. You've done so much for so many people, and it's not on you to kind of have to carry that weight alone, feeling like you're not good enough. It's like your dad would be proud of you regardless of the man that you've become, and all that you've done. And if no matter what happens to Riverdale, like your dad would, because she says like, yes, if your dad was here, he would be doing just like you are, trying to find a way out of this town for everyone. But he'd also know that there's a time to put down the tools and come home and be with the people you love. Because it's like, there is the whole thing of like, right, keep fighting, but up to a point you have to be with the people you love, because no one wants to be alone in the end, and everyone's kind of getting that. Like, Tabitha gets visited by Alexandria, like, hey, I want to franchise Pops. There's a whole bunch of like shops that went like under that. I'm buying up. We can sign it up, and it's like we can start tomorrow. But it's like, well, tomorrow's not guaranteed for them. But Jughead tells her to kind of take this opportunity, because even he's like, yeah, I've kind of like all my like dreams and goals. I've pretty much like gone through my bucket list of things. And obviously, just as he's saying that, this opportunity presents itself for Tabitha, but with everything going on, she's like, is this really the time? But for her, it's like, this means the world to her. And for Jughead, it's like, no matter what happens, whether I survive, whether I don't, I want you to do this, because this is your dream. This is why she came to Riverdale. She wanted to eventually franchise Pops. So, like, this is something you've been aiming for a while, and I think, this is something that you care about. And he's like, right, you're an angel, so you kind of can't lie, so swear to me. Because Cheryl, talking to Abigail, did come up with a solution after everything was all said and done. She can melt the comet because the comet is made of ice. The problem with that, though, is it would use up all of her Phoenix powers, and her Phoenix powers are the only thing that resurrected everyone. So it's not just Archie, Jughead, or Tony and Fangs would die. Like, obviously, Dag would. Obviously, I think Polly would die again. So would Nana Rose, and Dag would. And then there's also Alice, Frank, and Tom would also die as well. So it's like one or multiple people would drop dead because of this. So, and I mean, I'm sure Archie, for him, it's like, yeah, he's willing to sacrifice himself. Like, he'd probably be willing to, like, if it meant saving the others, he'd probably sacrifice himself. And so now with that on the board, it's like, right, not only can Cheryl might save the town, but some of us might not survive it. And who knows how many of us won't survive it. So trying to figure that all out. The baby Anthony of it all, they're like giving him the serpent tattoo, which I was also thinking like, oh, it's kind of messed up. You kind of didn't get your childhood. They didn't get to experience your childhood with you. At the very least, they got the opportunity. Like once again, my thinking is every aspect of his life that's meant to happen did happen. It just happened to him fast forward. So it's like almost like, hey, I was a baby, but like I lived my entire life, and I popped in. Now I'm like 18 or as an adult. And so, but for them, it's like, I was like, oh, are they going to undo that baby Anthony thing? It's like, no, it seems like he's just full grown Anthony now. And they're going to make him the Serpent King. It's like, it's up to you, you know. It's your birthright now. It's up to you to see this through to the end and, you know, keep the serpents alive in some shape or form, you know. A lot to kind of get thrust on him in that moment. Then there's a Heather and Cheryl thing. Heather's like, I'm going to go back to Greendale because she sees things between Tony and Cheryl. But it's like, no, like, you may meet my heart, like meet my heart beat again. Because Cheryl hadn't been with anyone in that set. Well, yeah, there was a person from last season, but, like, she hasn't been truly in love since Tony. Because obviously, like, her and Tony seemed like they were going to be in game. But they weren't. It's like, yeah, but Tony's with Fangs. And Heather's like, for now. But you guys being a thing is written in the stars. In some shape or form, you will be back together. I mean, look at Abigail and Thomasina, like, what they were. Like, time, universes, it doesn't matter. You guys are always going to end up kind of back together in some shape or form. Like, you know? And I kind of hope that's not the case. I mean, you'd hope that meant like there could be a future for Cheryl and Heather, but maybe not. When it was all said and done, who did they keep cutting back and forth with? I mean, it's the singing situation, but it still could be indicative of it kept bouncing back and forth between Cheryl and Tony. So there was also this moment where I was also thought was kind of interesting where Veronica was like, right, Daddy, like, she's like, I hope we don't run into each other in the afterlife. She kisses the painting and it kind of rots. And I guess that was kind of her way of finally, like, fully letting him go. Like, she's keeping the painting, but maybe it's just supposed to be symbolic of her letting him go, or maybe she is going to get rid of the painting afterwards, finally kind of saying goodbye and letting go. This is kind of that final step. But kind of thinking about everything, thinking about her powers, how they work, all that going down, Veronica thinks she can absorb the powers of the others and then give them to Cheryl. Which I love that she was immediately being like, if you want to, like, cut hands, she's like, yeah, referencing the loser club from It. It's like, oh, we should do that. And Cheryl was like, no one's going to cut my perfect alabaster skin. I'm like, really, Cheryl? It's the end of the world and that's what you're worried about? Okay, fine. And so... But it's like, oh, a seal with a kiss. And Cheryl's like, oh, that's queer baiting. And how do you know your poison won't kill me? First and foremost, Veronica's like, it's not queer baiting. It's about saving the fucking world. So, like, don't twist that like that, you know? Also, your powers as a phoenix kind of outrank my powers of poison. Because I'd also assume, like, right, because you are a phoenix, you just burn the poison out of your body. And even if you did die, you kind of, like... Well, we don't know if she can fully resurrect. We know her flames can resurrect other people. We don't know whether that's fully applicable to herself or not. So, but everyone's powers gets absorbed into Cheryl. She has everyone's power, and that would give her the extra boost she needs so that when she burns up the comet, she doesn't burn through her entire Phoenix reserve. So she keeps enough power left to make sure that everyone survives. So that's the plan. There's also the Betty thing. I'm sorry I'm bouncing around, but there's just so many threads to kind of pull on, and I'm talking about them as they come to me. Betty was talking to Drake, because Drake's like, yo, they want to promote you. They want us to, like run, like, a serial killer unit, you know? And, but Betty decided she didn't want that. And at first it's like, oh, is that because of Archie? And it's like, no, it's not because of Archie. It's not even because of everything with TBK. It's more so about herself. Because for her, it's like, I've been steeped in darkness for so long. Like, without even knowing it, darkness has been a part of my life since my childhood, and she just wanted to be away from it. She wanted to finally take the steps necessary to walk towards the light rather than, like, pointing herself to the darkness. believing that's kind of the only path that was meant for her. Like, it's like, right, her life had been steeped in it. Her dad was prepping her to be that person. But when it's all said and done, she's choosing to walk down that path, you know, and especially like after that conversation earlier with Alice, who was like, right, I'm so sorry, I failed you guys, but they're like, no, Mom, it's okay. We know you did your best. Like, we're here together in the end, and that's all that matters, that they get to be together like that. So there's, like I said, like there's just so much emotion around. Just everyone has luckily nobody went through this like nearing the end alone. Like Veronica had Reggie at the very least. Tom was there with Moose and Kevin. Obviously, the entire Cooper family together, including Polly and the twins and Nana Rose. And then, like, Archie's there with his mom and Betty and her mom and all of them as well. And so, like, no one had to go through this alone. Like, everyone in the main crew, Tony and Fangs and Anthony were together. And Cheryl does her thing, like, goes full-blown, like, I wasn't sure how they were going to represent it, and for her to just be like floating in the sky and just be like, oh, like a very like, I mean, considering everyone's got powers and stuff, well, had powers, and she goes full blown and gets rid of the comet. And the question is like, right, what is going to be the aftermath of all of this? Because each and every one of them lost their powers. I wonder, I mean, I would assume that would also mean Tabitha as well, which I should also talk about. It was a beautiful moment where Tabitha was like, oh, I only need a minute. I was like, oh, is she going to like loop them in a time loop? But what she did was she fast forwarded their lives together. In that 1 minute, they were able to see their life, like the fact that they have children, watch their children grow up and them grow old together. And it was this beautiful moment where you're like, wow, because we don't know if we'll ever have a life. And just in case whatever happens, we get to have at least gotten a glimpse and got to live our lives, even if it was just 1 minute, to kind of have it almost flash before our eyes. So there was a beautifulness to that as well. But the question is, and it's something that Jughead was saying, like at the time, none of us knew like what the consequences would be for this, like whether this would all work or not. And like I was saying, like they all lost their powers. I don't know what that means for Tabitha. I mean, she doesn't have her time travel abilities anymore, but she's also still an angel, so I don't know if you could really just take that away or whether that's still a part of her. Either way, she does what she does, and then it's like, oh, like, there's a situation with Archie waking up in his room. I'm like, why do things look weird? And then I'm like, oh, it's almost, and then Archie like puts the jacket on. I'm like, wait, what? And then you go out and you see like the aesthetic has shifted more so to the comic book aesthetic, and it seems like that's going to be the main continuous aesthetic going forward. And you're like, wait, what does this mean? So apparently, like, they kind of, with everything that went into this, superpowers, time travel, magic, all of it convulsing together created some, like, alternate timeline. Like, they were all able to survive, but it kind of, and they even talked about, like, I think even Veronica was like, oh, I want to reboot my life. Riverdale basically rebooted itself. It's like a in-universe soft reboot. So what does that mean for the multiverse? Because obviously Jughead from the other universe, his decisions and his choice to like warn Betty and Archie is what ended up kind of jump-starting everything. And I thought the point would be like, right, well, to be fair, Jughead and them at the time couldn't get out of, like, he couldn't go to a different dimension. Which, side note, I love Cheryl, because Jughead, we saw him just open the portal. Like, Cheryl straight up Doctor Strange this. Well, all the sorcerers in the MCU just, like, waving their hand in a circle to create a portal. I was like, yo. But, yeah, they rebooted the universe, and it's got that, like, classic Archie Comics look, that kind of 50s aesthetic, which the show always had, but now it was always that mixture of modern day mixed with that 50s aesthetic. Now it's like they're fully leaning into it. It's that they have literally transported, like, the entirety of Riverdale and all of its occupants have transported back in time, because James Dean just died in his continuity. So it's like, wait, this is like real timeline continuity. Because they were always, like, Riverdale is set present day, but once again, it just, like, Riverdale just has a very specific aesthetic to it, just kind of like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I mean, once again, they have cell phones and stuff like that, but now it's like, no, they are full-blown going, like, the 50s aesthetic, which is wild. And seeing the characters as they are, they basically have been rebooted to the beginning of, I'm assuming their freshman year, but who knows? They're back to being teenagers again, and lo and behold, who's the only one that remembers? Jughead. It's like time and time again, you end up being at the centerfold of it. You being the storyteller that you are, it makes so much sense. And he's like, I'm the only one who knows the truth BC. And I was like, oh, before Cheryl, but it's like, no, before the comment. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But it's also, it could be also fitting before Cheryl too. But we don't know all the ins and outs to what has changed and like what's rewound, you know? But like, cause we see like Betty across like crying, and we have no, I mean, I'm assuming that's related to the whole James Dean thing, but basically the way Jughead surmises it is that basically it was like some cosmic reset to basically take them back to a simpler time before Jason's murder, before the Black Hood, before all the tragedy that is this entire universe, this whole series. And you're like, wow, that's interesting to decide to like do a massive reboot like that, which mixing time travel and major rebooting stuff like that isn't necessary. It's something else recently did that. I won't spoil what it is in case you haven't seen it, but I wasn't expecting. I even love that logo at the end being changed, and it's like, right, so what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? Because my thought was like, right, they're going to lose all their abilities, they're going to forget about magic and stuff like that. I was curious if that's how they were going to handle it at the end of the season, which they kind of did, but they've kind of forgotten everything because none of them remembers the original reality. And it's like, right, none of them potentially have powers anymore. Once again, not unless Tabitha, because she is an angel, maybe she still has her time travel powers, she just doesn't remember. She might be the only one that can help with this. I mean, maybe they still have some latent elements then and there, which obviously this whole situation presents itself for like, hey, Tony and Fangs, they might not even be a thing now, and now it's like, now it creates that situation of not only like the Archie, Betty, Veronica thing could still now be up in the air. There's also the situation of Fangs, Tony, and Cheryl. That whole thing could play out differently. She was in Riverdale at the time, so because I could have sworn like the actress who played Heather is going to be a regular next season. I think that was something announced earlier. Like she was guest starring, I think, and maybe she eventually became a regular over the course of the season, or maybe she's just going to be a series regular next season. But I mean, the next season is the 7th and final season. We heard about that earlier, that the CW decided to make the next season of Riverdale the final season. So it's like, right, when you're in a massive situation like this, I mean, it feels like a good place to kind of like, and once again, just as you're kind of rebooting everything, kind of very similar to like, I definitely can get vibes of like, oh yeah, this with the kind of soft reboot element to it. I'm like, oh, it kind of has like slight spoilers. Once Upon a Time kind of does a soft reboot, which inadvertently the next season, the 7th season, interestingly enough, ended up being its final season, just because the show got canceled. They didn't go into it knowing it was going to be their final season. At least in this case, Riverdale is, which once again, the conversation of, is this season going to be shorter? Because I want to say season 1 was the only 13 episode season. Obviously, season 5 was 19, but that's because COVID did everything. So I'm so curious to see if they make it like, I mean, maybe they'll pull a Supergirl and Supernatural, making it like a 20 episode instead of like a 22 episode season. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, how they potentially undo this. Because the question was like, all right, well, is anyone out of this not going to survive? And it seems like everyone survived, but maybe the reboot is going to like, someone's going to have to sacrifice himself. Maybe Archie, always, as he even talked about it with Betty, like, yeah, my mom says I kind of have a hero complex. And he's like, I kind of agree. So, and like I said, the relationships, especially if they've kind of been rebooted, it's like, right, we might see things kind of play out similarly while also different. Because also, like, if it's going with that 50 aesthetic, because they actually going back in time, then you start getting some complicated territory for certain characters, because it's like, right, that's not the time to be gay or minority. So I'm curious. I mean, Riverdale's touched on that with the fact is that Tabitha went back in time this season. It was with the times, and now it's like we're in those times again. So it could get ugly and nasty and can complicate things, especially if like, especially because Cheryl and Tony have already kind of been through that because of the whole Abigail and Thomasina situation too. So I was also surprised Polly's still around. I guess she's just going to stick around. Once again, we don't know. I'm assuming a lot of that's still fixed. Makes you wonder, it's like, obviously they're not going to do anything with the Fred thing, obviously, because of, Luke Perry's passing, but not less Frank kind of slides more into that Fred role. I mean, he kind of already did, but not less that ends up. I don't see them doing that. Maybe they're just like not talk about it, but it's just kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of almost like that sitcom thing where sitcoms kind of get serious from time to time. So maybe it's like, right, that's just the nature of things, and we just kind of move on. Maybe that's how they'll kind of lean into it, but like, I'm so curious, like, what legitimately what that means for like Cheryl, what it means for Kevin, what it means for Tony, like, being kind of like, for one, not being straight in this particular time, and once again being a minority, like what that all means in the confluence of everything that's going on. Once again, how do you undo it when Jughead's the only one who remembers? And I wonder, will there be any more dimension hopping between here and Riverdale? A lot of those questions I'm curious to see if we get answers to in the final season. I'm just so curious to see what the structure of that final season is going to be like. And I think it's going to be interesting too, because like we're going to get a very, very different Riverdale going forward. Because this Riverdale is going to go probably lean way more into like the aesthetic and kind of like the sun. Like my understanding of kind of just like what Archie comics typically is. Obviously, like Riverdale is like a very dark spin on it, which once again the comics have kind of spread across every genre regardless. But yeah, this is probably going to be a lot more closer to classic Riverdale Archie stuff. So how that aesthetic fits, because even with the high school stuff, it was just dark from the beginning because of Jason's murder and just everything that was kind of going on, so it will be very, very interesting to see how that all plays out. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.